love the house of friendship. We love the tremendously good work it does within the community. And we are always anxious to understand and help the house of friendship. And so it is our great privilege this morning to welcome to our pulpit the Reverend Michael Hackbusch, who is the Director of Chaplaincy there. And welcome to you. God bless you as you speak with us today, Michael.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mark. It's a pleasure and indeed a great privilege to be with you, worshiping with you this morning, celebrating the Word of God, both in this place and in the audiences at home. A place where we can gather with a little bit of calamity. A place where we can gather with scaffolding. That's cool. You'll have to forgive some of my language. I'm rather young, a child born in 1968, so my linguity is a little 70-ish, a little bit 80-ish. And I was raised practically learning the story of the resurrection through Jesus Christ Superstar. That's brilliant. Truly, but on a serious note, to be a community of believers in Canada that is not that old itself, living in a congregation that really antedates Confederation itself, to be in the midst of what is a struggle for believing people, a people of faith throughout the world, a struggle to maintain identity, a struggle to manage and find purpose, and certainly a struggle to pass on what we have learned from our parents to our children and grandchildren. It is encouraging and hope-filled to see that. Scaffolding, plaster on the floor, dust, and the wonderful, exciting chaos that is getting ready for church Sunday morning in the middle of all of this stuff. Hope lives here. Hope is found here. Hope is carried from here out into the street, into your homes, into our cities, towns, rural municipalities, and indeed the world. God bless you for that. God continue to strengthen us for this wonderful mission and ministry. Yes, I am the chaplaincy director at House of Friendship and have been there since December of 2007. I was also a student of House of Friendship back in 1992 and 93 as part of my education process at Waterloo Lutheran Seminary. I did a year of internship. And it is there that I really came to know the heart and what it means to do ministry at House of Friendship. As a student, I was assigned to a couple of programs where residents live and find community. People who may have at one time been on the street, people who for whatever other reason just have more support needs than one might normally consider. And in this home with gentlemen about 9 to 10 or 12, there was, for this young person from Hanover, coming to the big city of Kitchener and Waterloo, to be in the midst of a community downtown in the core was not just a little bit frightening. I was bound and determined. As a seminarian, we learn things about justice. We learn about what it is to be pastoral, what it is to do and be and share ministry with one another. But then to get out there and do it. And do it in a context where you might just be a little bit afraid. You know, people down on the street. We're warned about getting maybe to cross the street to the other side when I see somebody coming who may be a little peculiar. I remember one gentleman, he was a resident at one of our programs, and he used to sort of shadow box with himself or would swear even a little bit. And when provoked, he would get a little loud and violent. He never lashed out or hurt anyone. But as it was, he had to move from the program where he was living with us to another program in town. And he was going to be leaving our community. Not the community of downtown, but the community of House of Friendship. And I thought, here's a great opportunity to do some pastoral care, help this gentleman move through some transition, but also to maybe learn a little bit from him before he leaves. Well, we went for a coffee. You do a lot of coffee, play a lot of euchre, and some gentlemen smoke a great deal. In this case, we went for a walk and grabbed a cup of coffee. At what was our market square, there was a coffee area upstairs there. And he was doing his thing, and did I tell you he was tall? He was like 6'4", extra beard, scary gentleman. But that summer, in our conversation, I recall that summer the tall ships were passing through the Great Lakes, making their way through the canals. And I thought, well, let's make some small talk. It's in the news everywhere. What about these tall ships? Have you been paying attention to the news? And at that, this gentleman lit up. Turns out, this conversation about tall ships, the schooner and that little boat on the dime, the Luno's one. This gentleman was born and raised in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. And in describing the ships, his eyes lit up. His hands moved as he spoke, and his face was animated with expressions that I didn't know he had. I had only seen the anger and the scruffiness and the scary stuff that keeps you away. But there before my eyes, this tall, scrawny, scary, intimidating man became a little boy. And as I reflect theologically, all this scriptural material that we read and meditate upon, there I saw before me, in my own eyes, a child of God. He has since, again, left the system, and I don't know where he is now. But at least for that moment, we had a relationship, a sense of identity, a sense that we are more than what we sometimes become, a sense that we are dignified human beings and loved. As a seminarian, that was transforming for me. Page ahead, 17 years, I can say that. My son was born on internship. My son is 17 years old. I am returned to House of Friendship to find a community and a number of programs that, in fact, has expanded. Back in 1992-93, I believe we had 15 programs. Today we have at least 18 programs. Are you familiar with potatoes? I know you are. You have been wonderful at working through the potato blitz and the supermarket potato blitz especially, and bringing food for our programs, but also the hamper program of House of Friendship, the food hampers. That's one. Did you know that House of Friendship had 18 programs? We serve the community through 4 program areas: programs in addiction services, community services, that would be appliance repair, food hamper program down on 807 12th Street. Family services at 4 community centers in the cities of Kitchener and Waterloo. Low-income neighborhoods. We have community centers that are growing and providing programs for children after school, English conversation circles during the day, and so that parents can attend the programs there. There's often childcare made available and community. Residential services, 2 apartment buildings, a youth residence, a group home for young men so that they can learn what it is to go to school, live independently, and then find work. The Charles Street Emergency Men's Hostel, that's where my office is, down on Charles Street. Eby Village and Charles Village, single-person apartment buildings that are rent geared to income, but also supportive programming. By support, we have staff there that are intentionally building community, being on hand if somebody has an issue with some kind of application or getting their rent together, or even compiling a grocery list. Building a tenants association so that residents there who, again, some have been living far and wide, either in homes themselves or temporarily without home, estranged, alienated. Here, people find community, people find a sense of purpose and self, and really a place at the table. House of Friendship has been around since 1939. It was an ecumenical response to an ecumenical women's prayer group that was looking to find somebody to help lead them with their mission. And sometimes I'm embarrassed to say this, it was a mission to evangelize the Jews. Again, this is the late 30s. Not so different from the political climate of the day. Why I tell that story is that because the mission started with a certain goal in mind, and then they set up shop in just basically a storefront downtown, and called and received an answer to their call in the man of Joseph Kramer, a Jewish Christian. He really embodied what House of Friendship for All Nations, its name at the time. He really embodied what House of Friendship for All Nations was about. Humility, humble service, providing a place for somebody to come in and take a rest from life, grab some soup or a meal. And Joseph Kramer himself was known to give the shirt off his back for anybody who truly needed some help. The churches, the Mennonite churches especially, bought into this mission. And from there it grew. Why I cite this in 21st century terms is somewhat embarrassing to begin into our mission, a ministry to evangelize the Jews. We don't do it. I bring it to the fore because here is a mission start, an idea to get going. People prayed, people organized, they set up shop. And upon being being in that particular territory, in that context of downtown, and seeing the need that is there, they were willing and prayerfully dedicated to changing their mission and meeting the need that was present, a need that was indeed there in their midst. House of Friendship has had now 72 years of that kind of mind, prayerfully discerning, maintaining and acknowledging the dignity of the human person, calling brother and sister friend, and providing a place at the table. We've grown from that little shop and that idea, again, of women's prayer group meeting, to 18 programs, 4 program areas, serving Kitchener and Waterloo, really the region. A number of years ago, we published a pictorial booklet, but also with some brief stories in it. And I would like to share 3 of these stories with you. It's a booklet entitled Friend to Friend, Stories and Photos from the House of Friendship. Here's a story from one of our workers at the Charles Street Men's Hostel. It's entitled One Day Away. Joseph came to our hostel in the fall, broken by lung cancer and penniless. He shared only the barest facts with us and always insisted that he was alone in the world and that there was no next of kin. He died in January at the hospital. We were told that he would be given an indigence funeral by welfare. The date for cremation was set, and then Joseph would disappear from all memory because there was no next of kin to claim him. Our instincts protested. Every person born has a family, including Joseph. Wouldn't a parent want to know the final end of a child? We undertook a search with the help of the police and last known contacts. In doing so, we discovered the broken heart that Joseph had carried in his silent way. We learned that Joseph had fled Hungary during a time of political unrest. He left behind his parents and many relatives. In Canada, he worked extremely hard and was a, quote, success. He married a woman who had 2 daughters. 2 years prior to his arrival at the House of Friendship, his wife died. Shortly afterwards, he was told that he had lung cancer. Those 2 blows caused him to lose his way. Unable to express his grief or to ask for emotional support, Joseph went away to die. He did not want to be a burden to anyone. 3 next of kin were found in Toronto: a sister-in-law, a stepdaughter, and her husband. Joseph had become lost to them. They did not know of the deep suffering Joseph had chosen to deal with alone. They came to a memorial service in the hostel chapel to claim his as theirs, to claim him, and to convey as much peace to Hungary as they could. 7 staff and 2 transient men gathered with them to reflect on the mysteries of life and death. Joseph had been 1 day away from disappearing from the earth without a single person to claim him or remember him. A story from a worker at 174 King, our men's addiction treatment program. It's called Transformation. I was apprehensive as I began the spiritual discovery groups at the alcohol recovery home. I believed that they needed my experience and education as a pastor and chaplain as much as any church. But could I guide them? What would be the content of our groups? I learned to listen more than to speak. I soon saw God present in their struggles and questions. How can I forgive myself and my abuser? Am I too bad and sinful for God to love me? Why do terrible things happen in our world to those who don't deserve them? What does higher power or God mean? How do I feel God's love and support? Can I live through the transformation into sobriety? Is there a better life for me if if I remain sober. Their questions and their life experiences needed to live in me, to enter my prayers and reflection, to work deep into my heart, soul, and mind. As I worked with the men, their questions, the AA literature, and my own teaching and preaching at churches, I was transformed, converted over and over again, experiencing ongoing repentance. The stranger in the man struggling with addiction, read man or woman struggling with addiction, is Jesus at the door, opening up God's love to me again, over and over. Transformation, life, and new life where life had been thought to be lost. Scaffolding in the middle of a Presbyterian Church, downtown Kitchener in 2001. Are these not all signs of hope? Are these not all signs of grace, of love, assurance, transformation? I think so. In our first reading this morning, we hear of Abraham and the call to leave the comfort zone of one's father's home and venture to a land known not. To step out into what may well be a void, into the chaos of the unknown, and yet step out with a confidence and a faith to trust in the promise of God. When we go here, God is with us. What do we do here? Well, what does God do for us? What God provides. So we too provide. John 3:1-17. Everybody knows John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he chose his only Son. God chose the Son not to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved. Unpack. What does saved mean? Well, for some, it also means to make whole. To make whole. Christ came among us, dwelt, lived, and modeled what it is to be truly human. Perhaps therein lies divinity. Christ comes among us, and calls us not to a life of condemning the world, but to a life of proclaiming the gospel, that perhaps our world can be made whole, and we are called to be instruments of that making. Some scaffolding in God's plan for recreating this world. Some dust and some plaster for sure, but called to make lives whole, to proclaim good news to the brokenhearted, to bind up the broken, and to set loose the prisoner of conscience, prisoner of poverty, prisoner of injustice. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your ministry serving with us at House of Friendship. As you can see, it is more than potatoes, but built on a foundation of sharing and giving. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your love. God bless you and your mission.